Hey everybody. So today we're going to go over my internet safety course. So one of the requirements a lot of organizations have is some sort of internet security training so that users have some sort of baseline knowledge of safe internet usage while you're using company computers and networks. So a lot of small businesses and individuals don't have access to this kind of training. Uh, so what I got here that I put together for you is a video that you can use that should satisfy any requirements from any regulatory compliance, any sort of insurance requirements, whatever. This should satisfy that requirement. So this is also for the general public. If you're just a regular home user and you'd like to get the same kind of training that you would get from a corporate environment, you can consider this that training. So I encourage you to watch this video, share it with anybody you care about, share it with anybody that works with you, share it with anybody that works for you. I don't know what your situation is, but this is a really important thing to watch. And also if you'd like a customized version of this for your company or organization, do let me know. My contact information's in the description, and it's also going to be at the end of the video. Um, but in this video, we're going to go over uh, passwords and multi-factor authentication, otherwise known as MFA. We're going to discuss email safety. We're going to discuss safe browsing habits. We're going to discuss social engineering. We'll touch on some common scams and where to learn about those. And we'll also talk a little bit about ransomware. So let's start with passwords. So password in MFA, a username and password, these are the most basic pieces of information that you need to log into a computer system. So to log into most systems, that's all you need. You just need your username, you need your password. Then you just click log in and you get logged in. But there's obviously some problems with this, like this doesn't stop somebody else who knows your username and password from logging in. It's you. So that could be a huge problem, especially because what if that system's financial? What if it contains confidential information? What if it's a log system where you take actions and they do something and it traces back to you? And by the way, this is also along the same lines of like you need to lock your workstation when you step away from it, because if somebody logs into your email, for example, while you've stepped away and they send an email to the CEO that says something very obscene, that's on you. It doesn't matter who did it. That's still on you, even if they prove it with somebody else. Why'd you leave it unlocked? But anyway, so passwords are vulnerable, uh, and so people get those. Either you give it to somebody else. Sometimes I know people share passwords for whatever reason. That's a really bad setup. So everybody, especially in a business environment, if it's a workplace application, everybody should have their own logins. And if it's not, if it's a community login, then it needs to have the bare minimum access needed to do that job. But or unintentionally, a lot of people have problems remembering their password, so they write it down, and somebody finds it, or they know where this person keeps all their passwords. Um, and so, like, yeah, you can go out online, Amazon, Dollar Store, whatever, and you'll actually find internet password logbooks that you can buy, and that's as good as it is bad. It's good convenience, but you need to make sure you lock that up. But yeah, so other than following them, people also can guess your password successfully. They guess it because there's really simple passwords a lot of people use that are horrible. Just don't use these. Um, but they can also do what's called a brute force attack, where they're running a program to guess one after another off of a list, off of something called rainbow tables. Uh, this allows them to eventually guess a password if it is reasonably simplistic enough. So there's some things that we got to do. So one of the things in this video that you'll probably notice is right at the bottom of this in big red letters. I say the moment a password is revealed to someone else, it is no longer secure. When I do this, it's because I'm trying to drive this home to you. So every single time you see something, and you'll see stuff like this on multiple slides throughout this presentation, make sure you take note of that. If there's anything you get out of this slide or any of the slides related to it, that's the thing that I want you to remember is the moment a password is revealed, it is no longer secured. So how do we protect passwords? So the solution to the first problem is simple enough. Don't write it down or keep it locked up only where you know where to look. Lockbox, safe, people know where to hide stuff, hopefully. But the second one's a little more complicated because, again, a lot of people do have trouble remembering their passwords. We have passwords on dozens of sites, and depending on your job, you may even have more passwords than the average bear. And so what happens is people pick up things that are simple to remember. They use the same password or a really similar variant on different sites, and all of these are bad practices. So don't use the same password on every site, because the moment a password is revealed to someone else, it is no longer secure. And so let's take a look at some of the worst passwords that people actually have used that have been audited and discovered. So top 10 worst passwords of 2021. Look at these: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And you just keep going. All of these are very simplistic passwords, things that you can guess without using any sort of fancy things to try and generate them, the brute force. Like, these are things people use. Password. Another one that I've seen people use, it's not on this list, that used to be really popular 15, 20 years ago for whatever reason, was "let me in." Just one word, all lowercase, "let me in." I don't know why people did that. It was just because it was an easy way to remember. And so yeah, if you use passwords that are like this, or if they are all letters, don't do that. So you've probably noticed too that there's certain sites, like I know Apple's really good for this. If you're setting your Apple password, it's not going to let you use dumb passwords like this, because we enforce something called password complexity requirements. So a lot of IT departments, websites, financial institutions, and government agencies, just any system that's developed by somebody that has half a brain, they've required certain password complexity requirements, and they often also require passwords to be changed at regular intervals. So I don't know where you work, but I know places where I've worked. For example, you'll get a notification every 30 to 60 days, hey, you need to change your password. And so, so an example of a password complexity requirement would be, must be at least 8 characters, contain at least one number, a capital letter, and a special character. So here's an example of a valid password that under that policy it would work. So you can see that It's a Small World, it's got the @ symbol, and we've got, there's a 0 in the world part. I mean, that's an example. And of course, now that you see this password, you should never use it, because the moment a password is revealed to someone else, it is no longer secure. But how do we make a password that's actually secure? So a way that I learned in college was to start with a phrase that you can remember. And so the cool thing about using a password phrase is you can actually write this down. You can you can go as far as writing it on a sticky note, printing it on a label, whatever, and sticking it to your monitor, your keyboard, where God and everybody can see it, because they're not going to know why you wrote that phrase down. It's not going to mean anything to them, but it's going to have some meaning to you. So we want to go with something. For this example, we'll go with something with at least 8 words. George told me to get a good password. So you see what we did here, right? We picked a phrase. So you could write it down on a sticky note. You could put it on a label, whatever. You could put it on the wall. You could tattoo it on. Don't tattoo it, but you catch my drift. Put it in a public place, and nobody's going to know why you have that. They're going to think it was good advice, like, hey, this guy probably gave you some good advice, right? Well, I'm trying to. But, so we got this phrase, right? We're just getting started. And so now we're going to take the first letter of each word. There it is. We've got the 8 letters there. Now, that's actually better than a lot. So, in theory, if you were really truly lazy, you could get away kind of using that on some sites, but that's still not going to meet the requirements of a lot of complexity requirements for different sites. So we need to keep working on this. So let's replace some letters with symbols, add a number to change case on some letters. Apparently I can't spell, but so now we have this, the GTM. So we got a combination. We've got some different cases. We've got um, symbols. We've got multiple symbols. We added symbols. So this is actually now a it should. So I didn't add a number to this, so we'll just pretend that I did. But either way, you can see what I'm doing here, right? So this would satisfy requirements of most systems. So, but because this password has been published here, for the love of God, don't use this one and get your own phrase. Because the moment a password is revealed to someone else, it is no longer secure. So if there's an alternative that's even easier, if you don't want to go through all that, you can go to a site like strongpasswordgenerator.org, and it can generate a secure password. It's got checkboxes where you can feed it how many letters you want. You can tell it if you need symbols. Go to it, play with it. You'll find out. It's pretty neat. But that's another way to generate something, something secure. So now we're going to talk about multi-factor authentication. So multi-factor authentication, you might have also heard this called two-factor authentication. It is a more secure method of securing access to computer systems. So instead of just asking for credentials, it actually challenges who's logging in to provide something that only the legitimate user would have. So, I mean, at the most basic level, it's something you know and it's something you have. So we know the username and the password, and then the something we have. So the most common two ways an organization implements this is it's either through a physical token, like we've got this guy here, that's called a YubiKey. It's something that you would plug into your USB port. And so they got a few different versions. There's the standard USB, they have USB-C keys. Though there's another one too, where that generates a code constantly on a physical token. So both of these are things that you would physically carry with you or store somewhere. So that's called an RSA Secure ID. And but those cost money, and so a lot of people, most people, if not everybody who's working in an office in 2022 should have a smartphone. And the beautiful thing about a smartphone is you can run these authenticator apps like Authy, Google Authenticator, Microsoft Authenticator. I've used all three of them. They're really good. But it's basically, when you're setting it up, you scan this QR code here, and then when you're done, instead of it generates the code here. So instead of a physical token that's got the code, it goes here. So, by the way these YubiKeys work is when you set those up, it will actually ask you to set up a PIN for you to remember. So, in some ways, that may be less secure if somebody physically gets access to that and they know your PIN. But it still adds that extra layer that if you're in California and somebody in Kolkata, India is trying to log into your account and you've got it secured with a YubiKey, chances are really good that they're not going to be able to get in unless they know a way around that system that's trying to enforce it, which happens. But in theory, even if somebody has your username and password, as long as the system's set up to require multi-factor authentication, they'll still not be able to log in unless they have that token or code. So yeah, some systems also use biometric authentication, such as fingerprints or retinal scans. Fingerprints are kind of going the way of the dinosaur. That's just because those systems aren't as good. The cheaper systems can be faked a lot easier, and the ones that are way more accurate are really expensive. Retinal scans, Obviously, that's going to be expensive. I could be wrong. It's been a while since I looked up retinal scanning systems, and there might be a system out there for 150 bucks, but I don't know. Either way, most places aren't going to invest in that kind of equipment anyway. You'll probably be really lucky to even get a hardware token. You'll have to request that because most companies aren't going to just kick one out to you. Um, they could. It depends on the kind of business. So, but either way, you can expect at a bare minimum to use something like Google Authenticator. So you can set Google Authenticator up on a lot of stuff that you use right now, like your Gmail. You can, for any of your Office 365 stuff, that's going to actually use Microsoft's Authenticator. But either way, you definitely want to use multi-factor authentication. So I want to touch on something on this before we move to the next slide. Um, there is another multi-factor authentication that you shouldn't use unless you absolutely have to. If it's the only option that the site offers, use it, but it's where they send you a text code. And once upon a time, that was a really secure way to do it, but malicious people have figured out how to take that code and get it anyway. And what they'll do is they'll fake their way to your phone provider, get their SIM into their phone, say that they're you, and if all goes well for them and not for you, they'll clone your SIM, or they'll just have them. They'll be able to intercept your text messages. So yeah, they can flat out at that point go to whatever site that's using this code, and they can get the code themselves. They don't even need to have you involved or even talk to you. So just yeah, but multi-factor authentication, the most modern forms are going to use the timed one-time passcode generator, or TOTP, or they're going to use something physical like the YubiKey, or kind of halfway in the middle. That hardware token's another good option. So now we're going to go on to email safety. So the thing that's really important in this section is you really need to know just who it is that you are emailing. And I know that sounds kind of dumb, but it really isn't. So this is one of the most important tools that you'll use for online communications, especially in business. I mean, in America, there's still some industries that use faxing, but for the most part, businesses almost never have a fax machine anymore. And so we use email. And so this is one of those things where it's so commonly used, it's not a surprise that it's also being exploited to take advantage of people who aren't prepared or even suspecting. And so, again, know who it is you're emailing. You don't know until you know who actually sent you that message. It doesn't matter if the email looks like it's coming from your CEO, your department manager, or the neighbor down the street. Think about how a lot of people get their Facebook accounts cloned, and you see fake people trying to pretend to be your friend from high school, and you know it's wrong because they died 5 years ago. And so the same thing happens with emails. People will make a convincing email, they'll register a domain, they'll do whatever it takes to find their way and to impersonate somebody that should be somebody you can trust, that normally would be. You should be able to trust your CEO, right? CEO comes knocking on your door, hey, could you help me with this? Reasonably sure that's probably a good thing that they came to you, right? But if you get an email, hey, could you do something for me? You need to make sure that that's really from the CEO. So one of the things that a lot of systems, especially if they use Microsoft Exchange for their email server, and your IT department or consultant can tell you this, but also one surefire way to tell is if you see emails or notifications like this right above the body of the email. You open the email, you read this, and it'll say something like this: this email originated from outside the organization. So just so you know that it's not always going to say that exact message, because IT departments can customize it, but they're going to say something along this line, saying, look, this came out, this didn't come from within us, somebody else sent this. So it's really important that whenever you see that, you take heed to that. Don't ignore it. This isn't there for your health. This is there to let you know that it didn't come from your company. And so, especially if you see that and it looks like it's somebody pretending to be your, again, your CEO, your department manager, or, somebody that you work with that you should be able to normally trust, if you see this banner, then you don't take action on the email. Do nothing with the email. Just ignore it. It's bad. And so, and what are we talking about here? So, on a more simplistic, on a more simplistic example, so just check the domain that it came from. So this one here is coming from, it looks like it's coming from Amazon, right? So, dear customer, so the first off thing is, I'm 99% sure that Amazon emails will say your name, but that's another thing to keep in mind. Amazon, PayPal, a lot of other companies, if they're legitimately emailing you instead of dear customer, it's most likely just going to say your name. Scammers are going to say dear customer. But anyway, so that's one sign. And so like this one here is pretending to be like trying to be helpful, right? It's trying to say, hey, this particular IP address has activity on your account. So let's knock this email down first. First off, the easiest thing that you can do as a non-technical person is look at this. There's accounts at Mazon.com. That's not Amazon. And why is Amazon lowercase? They're going to capitalize that. They're going to say customer service or what the department is. I don't know if accounts at Amazon.com is an actual email that they use. I've never seen one, but that's actually irrelevant. You don't have to have that knowledge. The part here is Mazon.com. Let's do this. The part is Mazon.com. That's what's messed up. That's the first sign. If you see that, you can actually stop right here, and you can safely know that that's a problem. But because I am who I am, and I want to pick this thing apart, so dear customer, yeah, that should be your name if it's a legit site. But again, that's like a 98% of the time thing. Not every legit company does that, because they might have an email blast that is legit where they're not addressing you personally, which is stupid because actual good systems that are used for those email blasts can actually do that. And so there's no excuse for this other than laziness if it's a legit one, but chances are it's a scammer. So we are contacting to remind you that on 20th June of 2019, we had identified some unusual activity. So one thing I want to point out here is the date format. This is the international format. Most legit emails that are sent out are going to go with your local formatting. So, like in the U.S., that should have said, 6/20/2019. But again, that's just me nitpicking. But that's another thing to look for. You should definitely be skeptical. And so here's why. So we identified coming from foreign IP address. So first off, this this IP address, again, you wouldn't know this if you're non-technical, but I can tell you right now, this is fake. That doesn't exist. So, like, literally the maximum value any of these numbers can be is 255, and we have a 265 and a 456. And, yeah. So, anyway, so in order to prevent any fraudulent activity from occurring, we are requiring to open investigation in this manner. Okay. Do you see what's wrong with that phrase? If you're not a native English speaker, you might not catch that. But as a native English speaker, there's something missing right here. That should be a word right there. Open an investigation. Especially if you're a professional company like Amazon, According to site policy, you will have to confirm that you are the real owner of Amazon account, of this Amazon account. And they're not even going to call their account by the company name. They're just going to say that if you're the real owner of your account. Anyway, by completing the following form, or else your account will be marked as fraudulent, and we will have to terminate the account. So, aside from that being bullcrap, I can't show this to you in the picture. Actually, I can. The person who did this screenshot. So, like, look at this. So they show the text here that looks like a legitimate Amazon email or address, right? And so, like, if you're reading that, they're doing that because they're hoping you're going to ignore up here, if you haven't already seen that. But, here we go. You know, they're showing this, but in this example, the screenshot is actually showing that when you mouse over it, it'll actually show you the actual link that it's going to. So this is going to a Bitly account. And so by the time we go to this, if you actually were to type this into your browser, chances are really good that Bitly's already taken this down, so nobody can use it. But yeah, and so the other thing too that a lot of these scammers do that makes it look legit, like this footer stuff here, is probably legit on Amazon emails. But here's my criticism on this, where the scammer screwed up. We hope you found this message to be useful. If you'd rather not receive future emails from Amazon, please visit the opt-out link below. Amazon.com, blah 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 blah. I don't know if that's that might actually go where it says it goes to. But the point is, any of these security alerts aren't things that you can opt out of, so they shouldn't be insinuating legitimately that you can opt out of emails from Amazon, especially if there really is, you know. But the whole thing is as far as I know, I've never ever seen or heard of Amazon actually giving you this specific kind of message. So there are legit emails that you can get from places like PayPal, your bank, Gmail, just whatever, that shows, hey, we just received a login request from this address. If this is false, you know, if this was you, don't worry about it. If it is you, then you should change your password. And so, but nothing about opening an investigation, nothing with this threatening language that we have right here. So that's me dissecting a scam email. But yeah, so this kind of email is what's called phishing, and the whole point of them is to obtain login credentials, identity information, financial information, or just to trick you into sending them money, which usually is buying gift cards. Could also be, you know, sending crypto, but gift cards is easier for most people to understand, so that's why they'll favor gift cards over crypto. But so never ever click a link or call a number in an email that you are unsure of. So, like, for example, like in this one, doesn't actually have an email or anything that we can use to contact them. It just says click this link, which is fraud. But some of them will have, you need to call blah blah blah. You don't ever call that number. So companies that scammers will try to pretend to be like, are going to be like Amazon, they're going to be Microsoft, Geek Squad, Norton. And there's a whole bunch of other companies like them, but every single one of these companies, they're big name companies that are known experts in their field. So they're going to have some sort of clout. So, you know, Amazon's a big deal, Microsoft's a big deal, Norton's a big deal, Geek Squad's a big deal. And so they're taking advantage of you actually believing that. So yeah. So once again, never ever click a link or call a number in an email that you're not sure of. If you don't think the origin is really from where it says, the absolute best thing you can do is, first off, ignore the contact info that's in that email. Don't reply to the email. Don't pick up the phone and call the number in the email. Go through how you would normally get that information. So if it's Amazon.com and you're looking for Amazon customer service email, or yeah, that too, but really the phone number, then you would literally go to that website and like you normally would, and you would look it up and find it on their site, on their actual official site, and then you can call that number. Hey, did you guys send me this? And they'll tell you if they did or not. So yeah, but yeah, never ever trust information in an email that you weren't expecting. If you weren't expecting an email from Geek Squad because you've not done business with them, and all of a sudden you get an email that says it's from Geek Squad, that, hey, you owe us a bill, or whatever, don't take action on that email. And if you do, you should definitely notify your IT department or your IT consultant. This is because, from our perspective, we need to know what kind of a threat surface area that you are, what kind of a target you are. So if you're turning stuff in to us 3 times a day, every single day of the week, we're going to need to do something a little different with your stuff, or maybe arm you with extra knowledge so you don't fall victim to something. But yeah, again, this is so important. Never click a link or call a number in an email that you are unsure of its origin. So attachments, that's the final part of email that we've got to watch out for. So these are really easily misused. So if you weren't expecting an attachment from somebody, do not open it. That's the first policy. So that's because nearly any file type can be used to hide malicious code that could run something. It could be a virus, could be something that they're using to access confidential data, could be used to just completely take control of your computer, or just to destroy the data that you have on your computer, like ransomware is often sent this way. And so, yeah, you might be running antivirus, but antivirus on the email server and on your computer isn't going to catch everything. But yeah, any file that's not a .txt file can be used to harbor malware. So unless you completely trust the person that sent that file, never ever open it yourself, and reach out to your IT department or your consultant for help before opening it, because bad things can very much happen that may not be reversible. So yeah, any file that ends in .docx, XLSX, PDF, or even an image file like PNGs or JPEGs, all of these can be used to hide executable malware code that launches the moment you open it. So don't do it. Don't fall for it. And again, never click a link or call a number in an email that you are unsure of. So, safe browsing habits. So this is like a general approach to surfing the internet that you should. And so the best way to surf the internet safely is to be extremely paranoid. Don't trust anything you read online from any unverified sources, especially when it comes to protecting your computer, your data, and your personal information. So the first thing I'm going to say with this is absolutely make sure you know who your IT department staff is. Make sure you know how to reach out to them. Make sure you know how they communicate with you normally. And, or at the very least, if you don't have an IT department, make sure you know who your IT consultant is. A lot of small businesses don't have a consultant because they don't keep them on retainer. They're afraid to email them because that email might cost them money. And if your IT consultant's going to nickel and dime you every time you ask them, is this a good email or is this something I should ignore, then maybe you should find somebody else. And so, but yeah, always ask them questions for anything you're not sure about. It is much better to just ask, hey, is this a good email? Should I click this link? Versus just clicking the link and, should I have done that? Really bad, because bad things may have happened, and these mistakes are very, very costly sometimes. And so always use some sort of anti-malware protection. Windows ships with Windows Defender built in, so as long as that's not disabled, you're protected. There's actual good reasons why businesses will use different antivirus like Norton or Kaspersky, or some of the central ones like MZSoft, that they can control from a central point. Um, but either way, always make sure you have something and it's not turned off. So firewalls are paired with those usually. Never ever turn that firewall off. Don't just allow things through. Again, if you don't know if you should be doing that, ask your IT department or your consultant. Don't believe everything you see or hear on the internet. There's a lot, you know what fake news is, right? There's a lot of fake sites out there that will look like a useful site for diagnosing an error that you have on your computer. And unfortunately, they end up being scams because they're telling you to to download malware, or they're going to a phishing page that's trying to collect your credentials. Like, these phishing pages look really good. Like, they can make something that looks exactly like a Chase Bank or a PayPal login, and you won't know the difference unless you know how to look for it. And that's an entire video and course all on itself. But yeah, don't click everything you see or call any number in messages, especially pop-ups. Never trust a pop-up ever. Um, so like it could, like this one here we're showing, it might have a an error. Or your computer has been blocked. You got this error. Blah blah blah. Call Microsoft. So it's pretending to be Microsoft. And if you take a look at that, that's some random domain that ends in .xyz. And yeah, so .xyz itself is a legit domain top level service, but this site is definitely not legit. And so if you've seen anything like that, you don't ever call that number. This is definitely a case where if you're trying to really find out if that's a Microsoft site, you stop what you're doing and you go to Microsoft.com and you look up their customer service and you send them the link or the screenshot and ask them, is this you? But since I'm a nice guy and I'm doing this video for you, I can tell you right now that if you're seeing this or something like it, no, it's not Microsoft. So you need to be extremely paranoid. Every time you surf the internet, be really paranoid. Is this real? Are you really who you say you are? You just don't trust everything you see. So yeah, so something like this would take advantage of somebody's lack of knowledge, their goodwill, whatever, and they're just trying to screw people. So yeah, so government agencies will absolutely not call you about debts or warrants, and they most certainly won't accept payments in cryptocurrency, like Bitcoin, Monero, or Litecoin, or gift cards from any retail stores. So yeah, if somebody calls and you get as far, like by the time they bring those up in the conversation, you've already wasted some time. But if they say, oh, we need a gift card, we need to just hang up on them. Just hang up on them, block their number, and move on with your life. But yeah, anytime you see anything that you don't know about, always ask your IT department or your consultant for anything you're unsure of. I can tell you right now, they'd rather you ask them the question than trust the idiot that just called you randomly, or the one whose number showed up in a pop-up. Those are not good people. If somebody is randomly calling you saying your computer has a virus, first off, there's no way they'd know that. Second off, it's not going to be in a pop-up. Nobody legit uses pop-ups for alerts. Not in your web browser. Not like what I showed you on the last screenshot. So if you don't have an IT consultant, or you've got concerns about paying bills, go ahead and email me. Just get a hold of me. Send me a screenshot. Send me whatever you have that would help me understand what you're seeing, and just ask me, is this real? And I'll gladly help you. So yeah, just a note on that is, don't expect an immediate response, because I do have a lot going on, but I try to answer these usually 5 to 7 business days. But yeah, so the other thing too is make use of VPNs. So if you are a business and you have a legit VPN, anytime you're working remotely, not at the office, absolutely use that VPN. And you probably have resources that you can't access without the VPN, but if you were just a self-employed person, you're a home user, and you like to go places on purpose that you probably shouldn't, or you like your porn, absolutely use VPNs, like private internet access. And or if you're just out at McDonald's or Starbucks and you're logging into your bank, absolutely use a VPN. Don't ever just do anything over an unencrypted Wi-Fi connection, one that doesn't have a password. Don't ever do anything, because if anybody that's sitting there that's in range of that Wi-Fi, and sometimes that reaches out to a parking lot. So it could be some loser that's sitting out in their car, and they could be sniffing packets and getting your logins to your bank, and that can spell bad news for you. So again, be extremely paranoid. Be very paranoid. And yeah, this is where it's okay to sound like a conspiracy theorist, because it's not just a theory, it's actually real. Social engineering. So, social engineering is defined by Kaspersky as a manipulation technique that exploits human error to gain private information, access, or valuables. So, in very, very simple terms, this is just hacking humans. So in any organization, the weakest link is going to be the person. It really doesn't matter how many firewalls, how many multi-factor authentication systems you're using. It doesn't matter how many technical measures are taken to protect data. All it takes is one person who has legitimate access to be tricked, to turn over that information to somebody that they think is somebody that should have that access. So the first thing too is, if they're pretending to be like your manager or even the CEO, this is a case where you absolutely should be sending those emails over to the IT department, because if that person legitimately requires access to that in their job, they should already have access. They shouldn't be asking you. But they know that people who are doing the social engineering stuff don't bank on you knowing that fact, and they're going to take advantage of you, on a psychological level, to force you to give them whatever they want. So yeah, think back to the examples earlier about phone calls and emails pretending to be your coworkers, managers, and even the IRS. They're going to try and trick you into doing something you shouldn't. And so one tactic that they will absolutely use is to wear you down until you just give up and do it, to just to end the call with them, or and that's definitely a strategy that works. And again, if you feel that that's happening, you should absolutely hang up the call. Like, the moment it feels like something's not right, just hang up. Doesn't matter. It's better to be yelled at by your boss later for hanging up on a customer, so you can explain, well, I thought they were doing something, trying to get into something they shouldn't. And so if somebody is purporting to be somebody else and you're not sure if it's legit, hang up the call. Just get off the phone. And if you know, like if you normally call your coworker on their cell number, call them on their cell number. Hey, was that really you that just called? Because something wasn't right. And so that's the first step, and that'll verify if it's really them. Don't just go off of the caller ID, because that can be spoofed. You call them from your phone, the number that you know to be theirs. So yeah, the other thing too is you can verify published information about how to reach them. Maybe you've got a company directory, and you use that channel to reach out to them to verify, was that you? Is this email really yours? Again, we go back to looking at that email header, and so you need to verify that. Google is going to be one of your best friends here. If there's a piece of public information like reaching Amazon customer support, that information's going to be there. But you can also Google the phone number calling you or the email address that you're getting an email from, and that will help you verify who it really is. So if you type in a phone number and you don't see anything about the company that it's supposed to be, it's probably fake. Or you see a bunch of results come up saying, oh, this person called me about blah, 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 and I don't know what, it'll help you paint the picture on if that's a real legit call. But yeah, if this is somebody purporting to be a customer, the best thing to do is use the contact information on file. If it could be a legit call, like I don't know what business you're in, but your customer might be pissed off at that moment, but eventually they're going to be happy that you actually took the time to verify that it was really them. And so, depending on company policy, calling the number that's on file might actually verify them access to the account. So, but yeah, anytime something like this happens, you should absolutely report these to your direct supervisor. You can contact your IT department or consultant. But if you've exchanged any financial information, your first call should be to your bank immediately. Don't wait. Don't talk to your boss. Well, if it's at work and it was a company credit card, you should. But the point is, you need to get on the phone with the bank or whoever the financial institution is. Maybe it's PayPal. But yeah, and again, always be extremely paranoid. So we've talked about some stuff already. So some common scams. If you go to the site here, USA.gov site, and I'll have the link in the description. But at this point, we've talked about like how scams work and how to recognize them. I don't really need more than just one slide here. I just wanted to share that link with you, and I think by now you should know how to handle yourself if you encounter one of these. But definitely, if you're curious, but even if you're not, I highly recommend reading this link, reading this article to educate, because these scammers, they're not stupid. They're very clever. And you need to know what they do so you can tell the difference between the legit company's behavior and a scammer. So no discussion about internet safety is complete without talking about ransomware. Ransomware popped up, I would say, in the last 10 years. So you know, prior to this point, the biggest threat people were worried about were cookies and spyware and viruses. And unfortunately, those things aren't the threat that they are. Fortunately, depending on how you look at it, I guess if you make money fixing it, then that's unfortunate. But but yeah, but so far worse than what typically the old school malware does. Ransomware is even worse. Ransomware can still spread itself just like anything else. So once it's taken over your system, it could be accessing your email, emailing everybody in your contact book with this bullcrap link. But what it does is it will encrypt every single file on your hard drive, and the only way for that to be decrypted is if you pay this really high sum. And yeah, so like here's an example of a screenshot where this is what what it might look like. So it shows a time limit. It shows the private key will be destroyed. They're trying to scare you, and because without that private key, they won't be able to decrypt it. So they're giving you a time limit to send. Unfortunately, this screenshot isn't going to show the amount in Bitcoin, but the typical amounts that these scammers are going to ask people for are going to be at a bare minimum in the thousands. And so, yeah, so the best defense to ransomware is to keep good and regular backups. So, in fact, I think ransomware is the perfect punishment for someone who doesn't take appropriate steps. If you're going to ignore everything I've set up to this point and you get ransomware, that's kind of your fault. But anyway, and that's assuming that this person survived a scammer, but here's a few fun facts about ransomware. So if you have cybersecurity insurance for your business, they likely have special requirements you have to meet before they'll even consider paying the ransom for you. And if they do, they will only do it once before they drop you as a client if it happens once more. So this goes back to why training videos like this are really important for compliance, because a lot of companies, for insurance purposes, are required by their insurance companies that every employee that accesses a computer goes through a training session like this to learn how to be smart online. But yeah, so while there are some ransomwares that are common enough that some good guys make unlockers, right? And they're out there, but there's only a few of them out there. And this is because most ransomware is custom coded, and you can buy this on the dark web. Anybody that knows how to access the dark web and use cryptocurrency can go out right now and order themselves some ransomware that they want to be bad. And so what happens with those is they give you instructions on how to set it up, how to make it generate a random key, and everything is random. That's because because they don't want it to be to where if you and me both buy the same ransomware because we're bad people, the idea is the key is going to be unique, so my stuff can't be decrypted by his stuff and things like that. So, yeah, that's why these unlockers are really hard unless that they have a vulnerability in the way that they encrypt files. Um, Chances are really high that the only way to honestly decrypt them is going to pay that ransom. And you shouldn't pay that ransom unless you absolutely have to. So, yeah. And the other thing, too, is after they've got your files locked up and you've paid them, they're not gonna get around real fast to doing it. First off, it can take, especially when it's crypto, it can take, hours, if not days, to get that transaction even verified. That's not even their fault, but they're just, they're not going to prioritize it. They just know they got paid. Um, but yeah, and then they might not even unlock it at all after you've paid. So that's the other reason you just don't pay ransoms to criminals. And again, the best defense to ransomware is to keep good and regular backups. And by the way, things like OneDrive and stuff, those aren't backups. You actually need to have an actual backup solution in place. Again, talk to your IT department, or if you don't have that, talk to your IT consultant to find out either how you have a backup system or how you can get one. Because if you do a lot of stuff and your computer is really important and it's not saved and backed up anywhere else, then something like ransomware will completely ruin your livelihood. It can absolutely put a small business out of business, and that doesn't need to be your story. So keep backups. And so cloudwords.net has a great article with statistics about ransomware. I took a screenshot from here, but yeah, so ransomware cost the world $20 billion in 2021, and by 2031 that's supposed to shoot up to $265 billion. So these costs come from everywhere from the ransoms, that comes to data recovery efforts, and even if they have backups, that's still the lost productivity. That's still restoring backups, and depending on how recent the backups are, if you just updated a Word file, for example, and then you get smashed with ransomware, whatever IT restores is probably not going to be what you just did. And so, yeah. And again, because of the way ransomware works, and OneDrive, for example, is not a backup solution because those files get completely updated the moment that they get encrypted. Then the encrypted versions go to OneDrive. But yeah, so in 2021, 37% of all businesses and organizations were hit by ransomware. Recovering from a ransomware attack cost businesses, on average, $1.85 million. Out of all ransomware victims, 32% pay the ransom, but then they only get about 65% of their data back. So just that might not even be the files that you want. And only 57% of businesses are successful in recovering their data using a backup. So what this means, that last statistic's really important. So your IT department needs to maintain backups, test backups, verify that they work. And these often get overlooked because it's an afterthought, because most of the time you don't ever have to use your backups, but or if you do, you're recovering a file or two, not an entire hard drive. So yeah, so by the time this comes down, when these catastrophic events happen, only 57% of businesses were even successful in recovering their data, if they even had backups at all. But yeah, so again, the best defense to ransomware is to keep good and regular backups. So one thing that you can do on a very cheap level is keep your important files backed up to an external hard drive. or if you don't have that many files that are that important, flash drives have gotten bigger, so you can in theory keep stuff on a flash drive or two and lock them up in a safe somewhere. And so these things will help you recover if you do encounter ransomware. And there's also cloud backup solutions. That again is an entire video, but the point is, make sure you have some sort of backups set in place. Otherwise, ransomware is very lethal. So yeah, so this concludes my internet safety course. Hope you took notes. If you want to read these again and again and again, you're more than welcome to. I hope you learned some things, and I hope you stay safe. The internet's a scary place, and I don't want you to feel like you just can't get online anymore because you can't trust anybody. No, you can't trust anybody, but you can trust yourself. And just get online, follow these tips and advice, and be paranoid and don't trust anybody that you don't know, and you should be all right. So thank you for coming. Thank you for watching. So if you need consulting, you need help, you got questions, feel free to reach out to me. You can email me, George at georgesgeekhub.com. You can catch me on my website, which it's a social media site. It's built out in a way that'll make you think of like Facebook. So we do have groups, but yeah, either way, georgesgeekhub.com. We got a Discord. We got all sorts of ways you can reach out to me. So if you need any consulting, you've got questions, definitely reach out to me. Especially if you don't have a consultant right now, you need somebody that you can even just ask questions to. And so there's definitely ways to make that be beneficial to all of us involved. And so thank you for coming. Have a great day.